Thanks for sitting down with me today. Great to see you. We're here in beautiful Whistler, British Columbia. Great spot to be. We got lots to talk about. Seed synergy, value creation. We got big topics. But before we get started, I want to talk about you. So you're well known in the industry as being the crop cop, intellectual property protector. Who is Lorne Hadley as a person?
Oh, I'm Lorne Hadley as a person, is a father, a husband, a grandfather. I like studying new stuff. I live on a farm, and I guess things that excite me are new technology and new ideas and people. I like being around people.
Where's home?
Landis, Saskatchewan.
Landis, right.
80 miles west of Saskatoon.
Right. Awesome. And so if we're going to share with people one thing that maybe they didn't know about you, Lorne, what would one thing that maybe they don't know about you?
I'm actually an optimist.
Okay.
I don't think I come across as an optimist all the time because I deal with some pretty difficult issues. But I think we actually can individually make a difference. And it's about doing the right thing. And I think that's honesty and integrity and being clear with people what you're asking them to do. But if we do all those things well, we can make the world a better place.
Perfectly well said. I love it. And I did know that about you, but I appreciate you sharing it. You have a great piece of advice that applies to so many things in life that I've heard you say before. You often say that as people, we can't look backward, and it's always crucial to focus on the future. Does that sound like something you'd say?
That sounds like something I'd say, yeah.
How have you got this wisdom? What is it that got you to that point that you believe that is the truth and that is the path forward?
I've seen so many things in my career and in my life where people took bold steps to make things better, not just for themselves, but for their communities, for their companies, for their families. And I think that's what you have to do. If you're going to make a change, if you're going to make it for the best reasons, if it doesn't work out, you didn't lose anything. If it does work out, you've made things better.
But you really do have to jump in with both feet.
You got to have the courage to say, what I've done before doesn't work. Let's try something different.
Yeah, very true. Well, I think that's almost the perfect segue into talking about value creation. So value creation, as I said, big topic, bit of a lightning rod of a conversation happening right now. I think one of the things we heard at the session here today was that there's a lot of, I won't call it misinformation, but maybe missing information in that producers don't have as much of a background understanding of the seed industry as perhaps we would have liked them to have, or that maybe we thought they had as we started into the conversation about value creation. Would that be fair to say?
I think it's fair to say. I think it's fair to say that because of the system we have, the commercial producer has a trusted seed advisor. And it's either a seed grower retailer or a retailer. They have somebody or some couple of people that they trust.
Right.
And that's who they buy from. And if those trusted seed advisors have not been explaining how new varieties are developed or the best practices for producing pedigreed seed or for seed testing, the commercial farmer puts a lot of trust in that trusted seed advisor. And we've been pretty quiet on all the things we do to make sure that that is a really good quality product going to the producer, both in terms of a well-known, well-typified variety and the actual quality of the seed involved.
Which is pretty much right across all of agriculture, isn't it? That we've gone ahead and done our thing quietly.
Quietly haven't told our story because it's kind of boring for the commercial producer to talk about isolation distances or talk about seed testing or talk about how you do plant breeding in the detail. And a lot of producers are detail oriented, but when they have a trusted advisor, I trust them, I'm getting the best recommendation from them. And we've got to respect that. As the industry, when it comes to value creation, what's key now is answering that missing information you're talking about and giving our retailers and our grower retailers the confidence and information to cover the last 3 feet between buyer and seller.
Right. It might be 3 feet, but it's an important 3 feet.
It's the only 3 feet that matter, actually.
Right. Exactly. So you're an advocate for a seed variety use agreement, an SVUA. And an SVUA, actually, rather than me describe an SVUA, why don't you describe an SVUA?
The SVUA, now that I can move my hands like you, The SVUA is actually a system where we're putting together a platform that allows the producer to contract with any distributor on that system. And not only does the producer agree to or know what he's got himself into in terms of future contracting, it's also a method of communication. So it's a method of communication, it's a communication of the contract terms, and it will be used in the future to facilitate the payment of an SVUA fee from the producer to the distributor breeder.
So it's collecting a royalty.
It's collecting a royalty for use.
Right.
So if you take a producer takes a new variety, takes it on his farm, uses it for a year, decides it's worthwhile, it's something he wants to use again. When he got it in the first place, he will have signed a contract. He will be asked what he's going to use, and then he'll declare, and then the system will generate invoices to producers for their use of seed on their own farm that they produce themselves.
Right. So my understanding is that there was a wide swath of industry, including the seed industry, including commissions, commodity groups, that explored what the best vehicle to create this value was.
This has been a long journey. It's been very public for a few months, but it actually goes back probably more than a decade. It started with something called Partners in Innovation, which was the vehicle that was used to convince and to inform people why we needed to upgrade our plant breeders' rights law.
Right.
Then there's been a number of very smart analysts and economists that have done all kinds of reports that always say the same thing. When you invest in plant breeding, the producer benefits. The trick now is to get the one where farmers understand what their commitment is, understand what they are responsible for, and making the payment to the breeder distributor as efficient as possible.
Right. And so one important clarification is that the SVUA only applies to varieties protected under UPOV 91.
Only provides new varieties protected under UPOV 91.
Right.
And it is something where the producer has a choice. If you buy certified seed of a variety and it doesn't fit your farm, and then you're out. If you don't use the seed again, you don't pay anything extra.
Right.
If you choose that variety to produce for seed yourself, then you're going to pay on some term that the distributor has told you about.
So it seems to me that one of the big pain points or misunderstanding points is that this is going to somehow eliminate the opportunity to use farm-safe seed.
In some ways, what it does, it facilitates the use of farm-safe seed going forward on new varieties.
Right.
It doesn't do anything to the old varieties. So varieties that are on the market for years and have been on the market before UPOV 91 was put in place, it can't be done on those varieties, so farmers can continue to use their traditional methods with those older varieties.
So the cross-section of the industry that developed these two options, they narrowed it down to two options that they thought were legal, that were beneficial for all of Canadian agriculture, from producers through the seed industry. They narrowed it down to two options. And now I understand, just learning this in the last couple of weeks, is that there's a third option that has been presented now. Can you share with me, why do you think that the SVUA is a better option than these other two that exist?
So the other two options are essentially a form of endpoint royalty. One is just an endpoint royalty collected by grain handlers that goes to the breeders. The other is one that's proposed where there'd be a carve-out of royalty that goes to a producer committee to redistribute any way they see fit. The reason SVUA works well, it's the seed industry taking responsibility to do two things. One, inform the producer of what his responsibilities are when he buys, and two, get that money in the hands of the breeder distributor as quickly as possible. So with a direct use agreement, which is what we're talking about with SVUA, what you're doing is you're taking the money at use and giving it to not giving it, but returning it to the breeder distributor. It gives them a really good way of forecasting what their income might be and allows them a basis for investment.
And I would think then puts control into the producer's hands to decide which breeder is going to get my money.
He's essentially making a purchase based on his confidence in the product that he's seen on his farm.
Right.
And so what it does is it also facilitates competition, because the only way you succeed as a breeding institution in this system is it's got to go through the pedigreed seed system, go out as certified, and be good enough to displace what the farmer's already growing.
Right. So one of the big issues we have here is that government wants to see some level of consensus amongst producer groups, amongst commodity groups, amongst the seed industry, and that's going to be no simple task. What do you see that the seed industry has to do next to be able to get these groups all on side?
I think we have to have discussions. I think we have to have facilitated discussions. I think they have to understand that when plant breeders get increased returns, they're just like farmers. A farmer gets more money, he buys a better tractor. A plant breeder or a plant breeding team get more money, they make more crosses, they do more testing. They reinvest in what they know. And what they know is plant breeding, that's where they're going to put the money. They want to use the money to build more winners.
Agreed. So you've been a straight shooter ever since I've known you. I think you've got a reputation in the industry as the guy that's not going to use the $10 word. You're going to call it as you see it. If you're a betting man, what's the odds that we actually get this implemented in what window can I use? In a 2-year, 5-year window?
I think that the way to answer that is just simply say there is a strong groundswell of breeder distributors and seed companies that think this is the option that allows them to deal with their customers in a positive way.
Right.
And they're going to be pushing to do with that. On top of what we've talked about here, let's understand that plant breeding has gone through seismic changes in their technology, not just the genetic technology, but even digital technology, even record keeping. All of these things, they're much more productive. And at some basis, plant breeding is a numbers game. How many crosses can you get? How fast can you test and throw away the things that aren't worthwhile and continue on? That's all changed. And so I think there's going to be pressure because these people have seen new technologies. Investment allows them to build winners quicker. And so I think the pressure's there. I think the concern will be we have to answer the questions honestly, openly. We have to be there and say, here's the expectation you can have on the part of a producer, even a producer group. We're not there to compete with producer groups. We're there to be their best partner. If they want to invest as producer groups in plant breeding, then they should support us because we're going to be the ones that bring them returns. And if their varieties are popular, they're going to get more returns. They can continue what they do.
The fundamental underlying message was seemingly with value creation, with seed synergy, is that we have to get over this idea that it has to have been our idea. That the idea of collaborating with groups and bringing the best out of each area, that really is the fundamental essence here, isn't it? That for so long in agriculture, we've had this partitioned off mentality that says we have to keep separate to keep our voice. And I think the more dialogue I hear, the more I'm realizing that the way we keep our voice is by coming together and making it a louder voice and a stronger voice and a more concise voice. Does that fit with your experience?
Really, I think it does. I mean, one of the things that CPTA has always done is we didn't set out to step on anybody else's toes. We wanted to work with people. We've had strong relationships with Canadian Seed Trade Association. We've had strong relationships with the provincial seed organizations because they're the people that have things they do that we need to know about and they need to know about what we're doing. So it's not about competing for the membership. It's about collaborating to serve the membership. And that's really what we're about. Value creation is a demonstration of that. We have 6 organizations that have discussed it. We've answered as many of the issues that we can within those organizations. They're carrying it to their members. They're bringing back questions. They're also using their their connections with producer groups. I mean, CSGA has a strong connection with Canadian Federation of Agriculture. They're using their connections to carry the message that the seed industry thinks it's important. We're prepared to take the responsibility to communicate what we have, what the offer is, and what the producer can expect, and what his responsibilities are.
Right.
So it's collaboration. It's synergy.
Which is exactly kind of the next piece here is value creation is only a part of the seed synergy dialogue. And as the guy who's in charge of the CPTA, you're in charge of protecting intellectual property in Canada. How or what is the one biggest message that you would want industry to hear about what the benefit of continuing down the path of seed synergy is if we take value creation and realize that that's part of it, but overarchingly seed synergy, what's that one deliverable to the industry that is most critical in your mind as it relates to Seed Synergy?
Member service. Member service is the key to all these organizations. One of the things we have to remember about that is you have to serve the members when you can, but we as an industry sometimes try to serve the members by drawing them to a whole bunch of different meetings at a whole bunch of different times and using up their resource.
Right.
So member service under this thing for CPGA is so that we can serve our members as efficiently as possible inside their daily life. So we don't want to have to call a meeting for CPGA and then next week find out there was a meeting for CSTA and next weekend find out there's another meeting for CSGA on literally or related crop topics. We need to serve the members together. They're virtually all the same. We need to work together to make sure communication is clear. And there's some great people in these organizations. And if they can work together, they're stronger. And the concept of one voice is an interesting concept, but what it really means is instead of having 6 organizations with a staff of 20, you have one organization with a staff of 20, but we all have a similar message on similar topics.
Right.
In the last 2 years, Seed Synergy has made me much more aware of what goes on in other organizations because simply I didn't have time. Now I know more about what CSAC does. I know more about what CSI does. Somebody asks me a question, I don't necessarily have to send them to CSI. I can give them, this is what you need to know when you give them a call, and they'd be happy to help you. Under Seed Synergy, it would be, this is what that other division or section does. Here's the things they're going to want to know. So it's all about member. A member should be able to pick up the phone, access a website, and get everything they need to know and stroll around inside that virtual world and understand what he needs to be successful or she needs to be successful.
One interesting thing I would think about taking care of members is that the group that benefits potentially the most is the customers of those members, which means the producers across Canada getting better service, more timely service, more efficient service along the way, which then it fulfills, I think, what I've heard you talk about with Seed Synergy to be delivered across the entire ag sector.
Well, and part of what I've talked about today is actually the last 3 feet. Right. So the better we can perform, making sure that our champion in that last 3 feet has the information they know, formatted in a way that allows them to communicate with their customer, the better the relationship. Just like everybody else in the world, we deal with those people who we trust. We deal with those people who give us the best answers for what we asked. Mm-hmm. And this is what will allow it to do it better. It doesn't matter what the regulation is. It matters whether or not the product meets the customer's need. Did the regulation support that? Absolutely. But it's about making sure that our champion, the seed grower, the seed retailer, has all the information formatted in a way that he can communicate to the customer the best information and why we're on his side or her side as a customer.
One of the pieces that I think has evolved in retail seed sales is this idea of who's responsible for some of that education. And we always talk about generating value. And so I'm curious, what would you say to seed growers who say, it's not really my job to educate my customer? And maybe not even just seed grower, seed retailers, period, whoever that is. What would you say to them when they say it's not really their job to educate the customer?
Well, my experience, and I've been in a number of different things, and I've been a salesman a long time, there's a concept known as needs analysis. And one of the short forms of a needs analysis is he who serves the needs that he knows about the best keeps the customer. Right. So if we know the needs and we can communicate how we're fulfilling those needs, it's education, yes, but it's also part of building that relationship. Our champion builds a better relationship with the customer. And the customer then has more trust, more knowledge, more chance to be successful. And seed is not a simple game anymore. Right. Varieties do multitudes of things depending on the crop, depending on the conditions, depending on what pest is in the field, depending on what system or market it's going to. It's not, I want some hard red spring wheat anymore. It's, I want some hard red spring wheat that has this tolerance, this kind of lodging that I want to use on this kind of land, and I want to go to this market. So unless, as a seed grower retailer, you're prepared to be helping with the selection, picking the model and the options, it's going to be difficult to survive in the future.
Well said. Lorne, thanks for taking the time to sit down and have a chat.
Always a good time.